Hello and welcome to Sifting for Soul. I want to acknowledge that I have been gone for a while. I haven't posted anything for about a month, and you might be wondering, like, Ruff, where you been? And I'd like to answer that in song.
I've been everywhere, man, looking for someone who could please me, love me all night long.
Okay, no, maybe a different song, because that's not exactly where I've been. Easier answer, where am I now? I am in Abu Dhabi. I am on the Corniche, which is beautiful. It's right on the water, and it's Ramadan. I am not a Muslim, but Ramadan Kareem to my Muslim friends, and Abu Dhabi has a special place in my heart. It's the first country outside of Morocco that I visited, and so it will always have a special place in my heart. Not just visited, I lived here for 3 years. So I've been here for the weekend. I've been quite a few other places, but something really interesting happened to me, which prevented isn't the right word. I didn't vlog while this thing was happening to me. I didn't do much of anything. And I'll talk about that if you're curious. If you're not curious, you should not watch that video. In fact, I will do a separate video that explains what happened to me and how it impacted everything in my life and forced me to rethink about my life. But that's not why you're here, or that may not be why you're here. So I want to respect the sort of purpose of this channel. If you're new here, I do videos that explore using photography as a tool to process and understand my life and the life around me, what it is to be a human. You learn a little bit about photography, maybe a lot of it about photography. You learn a lot about how I think about the world and the importance of thinking about the world and what things I learn from it. Sound interesting? Sound cool? You should subscribe. You should subscribe and share it with any of your friends that you think might also be interested in photography, becoming better at photography, and becoming better at being a human, because shouldn't we all be interested in that? You could be the perfect human, I don't know. I certainly am not, but I'm working on getting better at it. The last video I published was 5 solid reasons why you should be editing your photos. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to get images from here to here. Oh, here. Well, if you want to be pedantic about it, technically here and in the cloud server thing, but you'll get the idea. Let us get it. Alright, so coming to you live and direct, although I'm not entirely certain what it would be to come to you indirectly. Yeah, so mull that over and let me know in the comments if you know what indirectly would be in that case. I don't. Still, coming to you live from Abu Dhabi, and by live I mean pre-recorded and edited, so not live. But I'm in Abu Dhabi at the time that I'm recording this video, so I'm telling the truth. All right, so one of the things that you should understand, you probably realize this, is there are a ton of different ways to import images into Lightroom. I'm going to cover how I do it, but this isn't necessarily the right way. It works for my workflow. I've been using this workflow for a couple of years, so it's quite possible that there are better ways to do it since I started using it. If you have tips and hints, I'm open to evolving and learning like everyone else, so by all means, write it in the comments. Cool, and so I can't give you all the ways of doing things because while I am strange, I am not Doctor Strange, and so I cannot examine all of the possibilities. But I'll be happy to go over mine. What my approach takes into consideration are the things that are important to me. So one of the things is I like to have multiple copies of my images before I delete anything. And so in my camera, I have 2 card slots. I have an SD card and I have a CF card, and I write to both of them. So if one of the card fails, got a backup. And then when I copy them onto the computer, I make a copy to my external drive, and then that syncs to my Google Drive. So I have a local copy and then a remote copy. I just find this practice to be like an ounce of prevention. Just makes me feel better, and I don't lose much data in the event of hardware failure, which happens. Another thing that I consider with my particular approach is I'm not concerned about disk space. You might find that surprising, since I have a high megapixel camera, which means my raw files are going to be somewhere in the order of 50 to 70 megabytes. So you might think, hey, you sure you don't want to use DNG and shrink that? I prefer keeping it in Canon's RAW format, so I don't do conversions or things like that. It can speed up your workflow, I suppose, but that really isn't an issue for me. It's just a preference thing, so I won't do any conversions. I will basically set up the folder that I want Lightroom to import, and it doesn't have to do any copy or any conversions, so my imports are actually plenty fast. My approach also takes in mind using keywords, and it's for Lightroom. I imagine you can come up with a similar approach for Aperture or whatever photo editing software you use. Just bear in mind, this just works for me. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. How do you get your images from your camera into your computer or into your ecosystem? All right, so we want to get our images into Lightroom. And so to do that, I use an SD card reader. There are quite a few ways. This is just my workflow. If you have other ideas or things to optimize it, by all means, make some suggestions. I use a card reader. I like a card reader because it doesn't drain the battery on the camera. I can use the camera while the copying happens, and large files can take a while, so this is important to me. So my workflow is I'll connect my card reader, and then I'll go into my external drive, which I have connected up to Google Drive. So I have a local copy and then an offsite copy of it. And then I'll first make a new folder on my Google Drive in my pictures folder. And then I actually forgot what images I'm using for this example. So I'll go in and take a peek at what these things are first and scan through a little bit. Okay, so I've got some, this is UK Queen's Walk. And then it looks like I've got some bridge photos in here from the Queen's Walk as well. So I'll go ahead and create my folder. You can use whatever naming convention you like. I'm just using, I've defaulted to using sort of location and then some interesting details about it. So like this was UK Queen's Walk, and then at the end of that list was some of Windsor Castle. And so I will make a folder for the images that are on my SD card and my pictures folder, which is in my Google Drive. So I will have a local copy and a remote copy. And then I will select all of the images from the SD card reader and then just drag them over, which will make them copy and not move because there are 2 different mount points. And so this copy will roughly take about 2 minutes. And then after it's copied, we'll do the import from the local Google Drive copy into Lightroom. And with the magic of video editing, we're going to speed up the copy so you don't actually have to wait to 2 minutes. Once we're done with the copy, you could erase the SD card. I'm going to leave the images there because I like to have 2 copies at all time until it uploads to Google Drive. So I'm just going to eject that drive. And then before I import, I don't always do this, but these names aren't very meaningful, the sequence numbers. So what I'm going to do is just select all of the images and then right click, and then I'm going to select rename. And then for rename, I'm going to use a name that helps me identify what these images are, so that when I see it in Lightroom, if I look at the name of the image, it's a little bit more informative to me. So I'm basically just going to do a regular expression replace, and so anything that has like the first 4 characters of the sequence, I'm going to replace that with something a bit more informative, so like UK Queen's Walk, Windsor Castle hyphen or something like that, so that way I know the sequence number and what this image actually references. It'll be a bit more useful to me. So we go ahead and we do that, and then you can see the preview of the replace as well in the example, and then that takes a couple seconds, and now we're ready to actually do some importing into Lightroom with more meaningful names other than just the sequence numbers that the cameras happen to be on. With our images renamed, we're ready to import into Lightroom. So we fire up Lightroom, and I had it configured previously for some other work. So I'm going to unhide the navigation bar. I'm going to unhide the histogram. And then on the left side, under the navigation bar, I'm going to scroll down to folders, and then click the plus arrow next to folder and add folders. So the last thing I imported, or the last folder I opened, was in that New York City folder. So I'm going to browse for the one that I just created. And if you forgot what it is, I still have it, I forgot how you named it. I still have it open on the desktop because I have like thousands of folders in there. So I just jumped back to desktop and I started it with UK. This is why I use that convention. But even then, it's easy to get distracted. So I remember, or I just go back and, oh, yep, it's UK, the Queen's Walk and Windsor Castle. So I scroll down for that, select it, and click import. And then that brings up the import dialog in Lightroom. Now I use add since I already have a local copy. I don't need Lightroom to do anything behind the scenes under the covers and do any copying or moving for me. I just need it to add. I'm not going to use any development settings right now. You can in the future, including adding like your metadata, including a copyright. I'm not going to do that right now. I am going to add keywords. And so keywords are useful because you can search for things that are tagged with these keywords. And so keywords for this that apply to me right now are UK, Queen's Walk, let's see, 2018, because that's when I shot them. And you can use any keywords that you can think of. We've got Windsor Castle in here as well, of course, at the end. And then we click import and import the images. And then Lightroom will import the images. And that's pretty much it. These images are imported and they're available for you to process. Remember, this is only one way to do it. There are lots of ways to do it. This is my workflow. I encourage you to find a workflow that works for you.